can just not doubt yourself for 1 minute every day, then in that 1 minute every day, you'll be able to do more than you think you can.
Hey everybody! Welcome back to the one and only Jody Court Podcast, episode 12 with Terra Dawn Hazelton. We have today, which we're so excited. I'm like, I gotta show you on my page for their bio, like stars all around the page, because I'm like, there's a side of me where I'm like kind of nervous. Like I feel like the guests are probably more nervous, being that like, you know, like, oh, I'm getting interviewed, but I'm like really nervous to be able to like interview a star.
Oh, stop it.
You're the star of the new star in the Croesus Pass. It's
No,
so cool.
Not at all. Not even.
I have to agree, Courtney. I like prepared for this podcast.
Yeah, I know, right?
I did
like,
special
like,
reading
research this time.
You guys are adorable.
So welcome. Do you go by Terra or Terra Dawn? Like, what do you actually prefer?
Mostly just Terra, but Terra Dawn was a way to kind of, that is my name, but to separate sort of my like worky stuff from like just my me stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, so like officially like I just Terra Hazelton, like all my music and all my, but Terra Dawn is my sort of name. So yeah, whatever you prefer.
Sweet. TD, yeah.
TDH. There we go.
Yeah, no, we're really excited to have you here. And I want to just, so you're new to our town, and actually like we have never really even like formally met in person yet because of COVID.
No,
like
we
you and I
super have, Miss Courtney.
Have we? What?
Many times, actually.
What?
You can edit this out if you want to. But I'm like, you little brat. Okay, so we met at voting. We talked for quite a while.
Yes.
And then also I came to see you in the Red Ravens production and talked to you after that. And I think we've met one other time as well, but that one's on me because I don't remember the specifics. But I've always been delighted every time I got to be. And I think
now that you say that, I'm like, yep, we definitely have.
I pitched you Improv Club because I was like, you have to come.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I guess
but we haven't hung out.
Has been over email and stuff like that, primarily, and text message and stuff. That's probably my apologies. So Terra Dawn and I go way back, and I just like to share with everybody all of this stuff that I already know about her, and I'm not reading off of a page. Actually, I have to read this because this is incredible. When I first read this, I was just like, holy crap. I didn't realize how like the depth actually of what you do in all of the arts that you do. It's really cool. So I'm gonna read a bit of your bio here just for the viewers / listeners to get a bit of an understanding of who you are professionally. And then for the rest of the podcast, we kind of want to talk a little bit more who you are personally, a little bit of both, but yeah, this will give people an idea of why I have stars on my page. So Terra Hazelton is not only a celebrated Canadian jazz vocalist, she is also a 2-time Canadian Screen Award nominated actress. She has been a host of her own national radio program, worked internationally as a plus-size model, and is also a painter. She was born in Cranbrook, BC, and she grew up in Calgary, where at the age of 14, she began to study improvisation and acting under the world-renowned Keith Johnston, is that right? Johnstone, and Dennis Cahill, is that right?
Cahill, yeah.
Cahill, thank you. I'm glad that I'm asking.
Oh, yeah.
At the famed Loose Moose Theatre Company. At age 18, she attended the prestigious American Musical and Dramatic Academy in New York City, where she continued to study acting and music. Upon finishing school in New York, like that's such a classic story, hey? I studied in New York, and then I moved to Toronto. I love it. Wow. She started her career as a performer and was very quickly discovered by the late, great Jeff Healey. I said that one right? Okay,
yes.
That one I recognize. Terra's debut album, produced by and featuring Healey, was released in 2004. Following in Jeff's footsteps, Terra became a radio host at Jazz FM 91, hosting her own national show called Timeless. In 2009, now a seasoned broadcaster, Hazelton released her sophomore album, Give Me What You Got, produced by John Sheard. Screw up all these names. I should have prepared more.
No, you're perfect.
Also in 2019, Hazelton was cast in Canadian cult film Fubar II, for which she received a Genie nomination, now Canadian Screen Award, for Best Supporting Actress, and was deemed breakout star of, is it TIFF or TIFF?
TIFF. Toronto International Film Festival, yeah.
Awesome. I figured that's what it was. I just wasn't sure what it was referred to as. Terra's third studio album is a trio album called That's All, featuring Nathan Hiltz and Jordan O'Connor. While maintaining a full-time music career, she has also continued to build her career as an actress. She can be seen in a series called Whatever Linda, for which she was nominated for her second Canadian Screen Award, as well as her recurring role on the hit TV series Orphan Black. And most recently, in a new Vice TV series, Fubar Age of Computer. In 2018, Hazelton was thrilled to be cast in a new Canadian stage play called Undercover. The show had lengthy runs in Toronto, Calgary, and Edmonton with over 100 performances. In 2019, Terra was thrilled for the release of her second feature film, Cranks, which premiered at the Vancouver International Film Festival. And this is my favorite part. Terra has recently relocated from Toronto, where she had lived for the past 20 years, to the Crow's Nest House. Yeah. And that's what brings you to this podcast. So welcome, and holy smokes, you've done a lot of really cool things. I want to have a series of podcasts with you so that we can at one point dive into all of the really deep artsy, what's your career and life been like as an artist, really on the art side, and then another, you know what I mean? I feel like we can take this so many directions.
Well, I'm up for anything. Thank you so much for asking me to do this. You guys are so lovely and talented, and I really like what you're doing. So it's a real honor. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.
We are pretty excited to have you. And as Courtney was reading it, I've read your bio 4 times. And every time I read it, I'm like, oh my gosh, all the things. And then when I watched your reel, I was like, Orphan Black.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that episode and all the bar and everything. I'm just like, oh, it's amazing. Your talent is through the roof, hun. It's amazing. And we really wanted to have you on the show because you're new to town and we just really want to get to know you. Welcome you, spread the word to our little community of all the things you offer everyone who lives here and surrounding area. And your story that we're going to talk about today is about transformation, and it's about healing, and it's about reconnecting with that voice within, which I think you are a shining example of. In everything I've read, everything I've listened to about your story and your history, is that you do a really good job of filtering out the noise and finding that little voice within and listening to it and following its guidance, which is kind of what Courtney and I talk about, and it's what Courtney and I try to teach about. So I'm thrilled to have you on this wee little podcast of ours.
Oh no, thank you. It's like I said, it's my pleasure, and I love that that's what you guys are about. That really obviously strikes a chord with me. So this, I feel like, is just so fun, and I'm so pleased to get to talk about it with awesome kick-ass, if I may say, women, so yeah, it's cool.
That is what we say. We get to talk to kick-ass.
I know, I forgot to say that. The podcast where we shoot the shit with people we genuinely think kick ass.
Right.
I was just so excited to introduce you.
Right? Really, Terra Dawn kicks ass, people. This is very clear. Epic success. So we're just going to throw some rapid fire questions at you, and then Courtney will dig into the nitty gritty of our first kind of big question. So first question, favorite color?
Green.
I love green. Favorite book?
Oh, that is so well, Lord of the Rings.
Oh, nice.
Go with the classic favorite of all time. Yeah.
That is fantastic. And so here's another question. Favorite book to give other people? Because sometimes that's different.
The Alchemist.
Oh, nice.
Which is also one of my, and I can't find my hardcover copy with the beautiful illustrations since I moved here, and it's been actually very upsetting. But that book I've given to a lot of people. I love that little story.
I think I have 2 copies. I'll see if I can find both of my copies, because it's one that I often, teaching high school, there's often, every once in a while, I have these grade 12 students who just like latch on to me and I latch on to them, and we build this connection, and it's always the book that I give them when they graduate.
Oh, yes. So, yes, that's about the age I was when I first read it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great book. I made my dad read it actually too. I love that book.
Oh, yeah, me too. I cry. I could just cry thinking about it. That and The Little Prince also are.
Oh yeah.
You know, like if you're going to go for I do love lots of books, but those are the biggies.
Nice. Okay. I got one more question for you. Okay. This is one of our favorites on the Jody Court podcast.
Okay.
So if you had a billboard anywhere, what would it say?
I think it would say, follow your heart.
Nice.
Love it.
I love it.
And then Black Lives Matter would probably also a good thing to put on it.
No kidding.
Yeah.
It's been a couple of hard days with all of that. And just, I'm sitting here trying to figure out, ways to make myself part of the solution. Yeah. Anyway.
That's a whole other conversation, hey?
You bet it is. Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
Maybe one that we could have actually with more people, that might be a really neat way to play our parts as people who interact with the public.
As a particularly white part of the world, I have to say, having come from a very multicultural city, it's I miss the multicultural aspect a little bit but I mean, I wouldn't change a thing, but yeah, that would be a great thing for you guys to do.
So actually, I mean, that sort of led that you bringing up Toronto leads me into my first question for you, which is, what actually was it that made you break ties with Toronto and want to relocate in the mountains? And lucky for us, it was a Croz's Pass.
You're so sweet. It's a very layered question. And I think, like with a lot of things, there isn't one definitive point or answer to that. But to try to be succinct, I think, if I had to pick like the top 3 or 4 things that combined the decision, because in making the decision to leave Toronto, essentially, I was like risking, and still am every day that goes by, being further and further away from my actual jobs and what I do for a living and what I've spent my entire adult life doing, and a lot of my younger life too doing. So it was a combination of the little voice inside my stomach and my head that's always known I wanted to come back. For the last 5 years, from about 2015, like if you were to interview my best friend who lives in Hamilton, Ontario now, she would confer that it's been like, it was brewing for years, and every year, usually around the same time, I'd have a meltdown and just be like, this is it. I've got to go back to Alberta. I have to get out of here. And then, life and working, and you're tied in and you're plugged in. And so it's like, but like, obviously I'm not going to leave. This is where my whole world is. All my friends, all my colleagues, all my work that I do is centered around being in that city, and that city allowed me to tour and to audition and all of those things like you get from being in a city. Like, so why a lot of artists end up in cities, right? I think it's less common that there's artists flourishing across Canada in tiny towns. Like they do, but it's like the bulk of them end up in cities for a reason. But so it was a combination of knowing it was time to reconnect with nature. Also, my family is here, and I lived away from all of them for 20 years. And after a while, that takes a bit of a karmic, cosmic, whatever it is, kind of toll. Like I feel like each year that goes by in life, you make compromises and you make decisions that can just chip away at your, like, you know, you only have so many tickets of soul or whatever it is, of joy inside, and you're constantly, I feel like in life, well, you have giving one up in order to get something, and it's this constant back and forth. But I think my tickets, or whatever, I don't know what I'm describing, were getting depleted. And then just like, to be straight up honest, you know, the city just every year got more and more expensive, and rent got more and more expensive, and food got more and more expensive. And I've always like lived alone, so I avoided a few bad ideas shacking up. Glad I did. Anyway, but so for the most, I've just always been on my own in terms of financially and like paying the rent and paying the bills. And so having a single income in a city like Toronto, you also don't find very many artists, at least in my world. I can't speak broadly, but in the jazz scene, which is quite a little nuanced, niche-y, clicky thing, you know, but in my world that I worked in full time, there were very few artists who were on their own completely, because it's very hard to do. More of them a longer time ago, but as time went on, it's like people get married, you know, a lot of girlfriends of mine like married non-artists, and that was, you know, you can't help who you fall in love with, but I think there might have also been a bit of strategy in who you're dating. And you know, it's hard not to date artists, it's hard not to date anyone you work, you know, like everyone just experiences that. It's like you're meeting the people that are doing the same things as you. But it just sort of, when I took a picture of it all, was like, yeah, all of these people who I was like, they're doing it, why? It's like, oh, because yeah, it's a little easier financially to make it go. And I did it as long as I possibly could, and then I had to just decide, is it worth still fighting, or can I figure out a way to not compromise on my career at all, and still like have my best case scenario and live in the exact place I want to live, which is not the place you'd think of to move to do what I do for a living. And it was like, how do I do this? And all those things just kind of piled on, and one thing would get louder, and then this one would get louder, and it just sort of, the family, the money, it just all kind of built and built and built. And that started to take a really big toll on my health, because my mental health was not good because of being just in a constant state of stress all day, every day. And then that mental anguish started to manifest physically. And I already had enough stuff physically. I've been through some stuff that my body is already dealing with. I was in a really bad car accident in 2002, and that's left me with a lot of residual things to deal with. And so it just made everything worse, the more stressed and the more unhappy I was. And I feel kind of guilty saying I was unhappy in Toronto, because for the most part, that's not true for all of it. I mean, I had the greatest time. I've had the most amazing 20 years that anyone could ever have. And I recognize how insanely lucky that I have been to travel the world for my job and to get paid to entertain people, or just to smile in some cases, or whatever, you know, like but the flip side of that coin, like there's always two sides to every story. And the flip side of that coin is that it was a very hard way and you're fighting. It's just like constant fighting and constant competition and it just after a while, and a lot of rejection when you're an actor, like you deal with it on a weekly basis. Like every week you're going to go to auditions and you're going to book one out of every 100. And so you have to be, and like 99% of the time you're fine. But if it's that one day when you're emotionally raw and you get massively rejected for some awesome thing you shouldn't have let yourself daydream about, but you did. Oh, and then enough of those build up and build. I just needed to recalibrate and live somewhere I could afford to take the time I needed off. That was the other thing I realized. I turned 42, which was 40 as well, which is, I think, a big part of it, is like, yes, maybe this was my midlife crisis. But as I was approaching 40 in that last year, and it was just the worst it'd been for everything. I was the poorest I'd ever been. I was the saddest I'd ever been. I was the heaviest I'd ever been. I was the sickest I'd ever been. And then I was turning 40, and I just thought, this is the time. If I'm going to try to have the courage to pull a freaking 180 on my whole life and my whole dreams and everything I've never wavered since I was a kid on my dream. I knew when I was 5 years old what I wanted to do, and I have not wavered ever. And so I dealt with the guilt of, does this mean I'm giving up? And gratefully, what I've realized in this year here is that by coming here, I had time to not have to. People don't realize, like, when you're an artist, you work 24/7. Like, if you're not sleeping, you're working, because you're hustling nonstop. And then also, like, hundreds of songs don't learn themselves. Instruments don't learn to play themselves. Like you constantly have to work on your craft. It's not, I go to work for 8 hours and then I come home and I can kind of put it away until tomorrow. It's just like, So by coming here and kind of in a way, I just started saying, I'm turning 40, I'm taking a sabbatical. Like, that was kind of like the joke. And then like the people who knew me really well were like, no, you're having a life crisis and your life is falling apart. I'm like, yeah, but we're just going to call it a sabbatical because professional people do that. But in the joke of that, it gave me pause to think, actually, I haven't stopped since I moved to Manhattan on June 1st, 1997. I haven't stopped going non-stop every week since that date of figuring out and working towards the next thing.
Wow.
Like, and I was like, I've been to Europe, but guess what I was doing there? I was working. Like, yes, my job, but I was like, I've been on one vacation my entire adult life. It was also to Europe, and it was amazing. But like all the great places, I was like, yes, but I'm still actually there because I'm working, and that's amazing. But I was like, wow, I haven't done these things that people do. Like, people go on vacation for a week every year because that's healthy and that's normal. But artists and most people I know, it's like, we don't get to do that. I mean, it's a privilege that we live the life we do, but there's a lot of trade-offs I think people are unaware of. And I just was like, yeah, so this is I built it up for 20 years and didn't take any time off ever, and so I'm going to I have to work. So I've worked, but I'm not going to work in the way that I did. And living here, like my monthly cost of living is probably a third of what it was. And so it allowed me to breathe. And then that allowed me to relax into this. And it took a while. It took 6 months for my nervous system to just stop buzzing, and for my body to even be able to absorb nutrients, or like it wouldn't. Even if I was being really good to it, it wouldn't take it because I was I didn't have, like, my adrenal glands, like all of these things. It's just like, wow, you need to take pauses, you need to break, and you need to have happiness. And I realized I had all my dreams had really come true. All of the things I would check off in a box, I've got to check off. Who can say that? Like, all your kid dream, like, I want to be a movie star. Check. Okay.
Yeah, right.
I want to be a jazz singer. Check. I want to be a model. Check. Like, all of these things, I'm like, but I also didn't breathe for 20 years. So here, this is like, to me, I'm like in my magical secret garden. And after that 6 months, once my body started to go, oh, okay, and then it was almost overnight. It felt like my pain level dropped massively. And then as soon as that kind of gave off a bit, like my spinal injury and like all the stuff that just was like screaming at a 10 out of 10 for the past 5 years. I could barely walk when I moved here. I was like on 2 canes. I've had a ton of surgery. I have a lot of robot body parts and things like that. And I couldn't even move. Like, I have a crazy flight of stairs. You've seen it, Courtney. And when I had never seen the apartment when I took it. Like, I took it sight unseen because I needed a place. And Tynan sent me a link and was like, I saw this ad, and God bless Tynan, because I got this apartment, but I didn't know what I was driving up to. I drove from Toronto with my cats in the car by myself across the country twice that year because I had to drive the car out there. My dad lent me so I'd have it to bring my cars back. And I pulled up to my little apartment, and when I walked in, I just was like, I'm never going to be able to live here because I'm not going to be able to get up these stairs every day. And I was genuinely super worried. And now I just think like I've already walked 10 kilometers today and I'm still going out when we're done. Like, so it's actually, I think, a miracle because I don't give up on things. And I've generally always been a super proactive, super positive, you have to be to survive. And I had given up on, like, I was like, I'm going to live there and that's going to feel good. And I'll at least be able to sit, for 6 months, I didn't really move, but I would drive somewhere and I would sit by that river and just still be in nature. I wasn't hiking, but I was like, if this is all I get, still that's okay. And it's still 1,000 times better. But I had actually resigned to the fact that, well, I've got mobility issues and maybe I have to stop pretending I don't. And like, I kind of was just like writing it out to the like, well, I'm basically just a broken old lady now. And it was like, that's okay. At least I live here. And then like, yeah, just after I started to feel a little bit better and meditated for 6 months by the river and the lake and I just actually was able to move my body a little bit more each day. And like, it's still nothing. Like, I was laughing with my, I live above an outdoor store. Everyone knows Spry, amazing Spry. And like Susan, if you've ever met Susan, like as soon as I met her the day I arrived, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm like, who's this like
Susan who runs like 100-mile runs?
Yeah, like who runs through the mountains, like through the night. Like, I'm like, and she's just the most beautiful. Anyway, I was like, oh, this is getting, but they were so kind. And I got a little bit distracted on my own thought there, but what was I saying? Oh, I talked to her a lot, and Susan has worked with people about chronic pain, and she just sort of said like one day at a time, and you just have to try to do something every day, and if you can get the practice of exercising every single day, it will. And it's true. Like, I'm like, now I'm a believer. I'm a believer.
And I think too, like sometimes we think that exercise means I have to work out. I think that like a couple, I don't know, 6 or 7 podcasts ago when we had Heather Davis on, she said like, just getting outside, she's like, sometimes I'll walk around the block. And like, this is a woman who owns like an outdoor adventure company.
Yeah.
Right?
She's pretty amazing.
And she's like, just that turning the expectation into appreciation, to use that quote again, rather than expecting that I have to do 30 minutes, 2 hours, whatever, 15 kilometers, whatever that number is in your head. Like, what if it's just I go outside and I enjoy myself and I go one step further than yesterday? Literally one. That would be great.
That's basically what I did.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't even know that my phone, for however many years I've had an iPhone, had been tracking my daily activity. I had no idea until 2 months ago. I'm like, how many iPhones have I had in my life? I've had them since the beginning. And I've never, ever clicked on the health app, like ever, once. I tried to delete it because I'm like, what is this? I don't need it. I need room for other apps. Yeah. And that's initially why I was like, why I opened it, is because I was trying to get rid of it. Like, what is this thing with a heart? Like, what? And then that's what made me realize that I'd actually, because I haven't been trying not to think about it as like, I'm going to go, because that generally makes me go, nope, I'm going to go paint. I'm going to like, if it's, and so, but because I've actually fallen in love with just being outside, I didn't even realize till I accidentally opened this thing. And then suddenly it's showing me, it's like, you took 14,000 steps yesterday. And I'm like, excuse me? What? And so now I'm obsessed, because now every day I can actually look, and now I'm like, I gotta beat my number from yesterday. So it might be getting a little out of control, but it's like, it's amazing. And then it showed me, I won't even say the number because it's so embarrassing, and then it showed you like, this is how much you moved in 2019. It was nothing. And I was just like, wow, I never put that together. When I was sitting at this desk in my loft in Toronto, just in so much pain and crying and just feeling hopeless. And I never once thought, oh, maybe if I, moved around every day, I would feel better. And it's not that simple, actually, because even like, it's different to go for a walk in Toronto. It's not that you can't or that it's not nice, but this is my preferred. And so like, I didn't actually love being amongst bajillions of people on busy, especially as a bigger person. Like you're constantly being told you're taking up too much space. It's just, I'd rather not get in someone's way than try to go. There's so many levels of just absolute insanity involved in it. But I never would have thought, like, oh, just breathing clean air and like meditating, which I never used to do either in the city, like really getting into it and learning how to, and like accepting that I was really bad at it, and like accepting that failure over and over again and going, no, I'm going to keep, and then feeling the benefits of that. I just think like it's such a huge gift that I don't know, like I feel like I've had really good luck and really bad luck in my life. And anyone who knows me really well would say the same thing. Like I have friends who joke, they're like, yeah, you're the luckiest unlucky person we've ever met. It's like my life, and it's always like comes in balance. It's like, okay, universe, it's like, we're going to throw you through a windshield and like crush your whole body and just like, boom. But then 4 months later, we're going to give you the best singing gig in Canada. Like, it's just like, but it was, a lot of it was like physically getting beaten up over so many years. And anyway, I'm rambling, but just this being here has shown me the gift of nature and something I always knew. I knew it, like I knew that inside. But and it's not my fault. I had to live in a city to establish myself. But the whole idea is maybe I'm established enough now that I can try to figure it out and live somewhere beautiful and heal my freaking whole person. Yeah. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
I am like eating, I am digesting this so well right now.
I'm closer to the screen because I'm like, I just want to be closer to her.
Oh, I wish I could hug all of you.
What I love, I know it was so hard. So I saw Terra at the lake a couple times over the last few days out at Chinook Lake. And it was so hard to not like embrace her. And I've had that feeling with a few people that I run into at the grocery store, and it's like, it's so weird not to hug and do those things. I have a question for you, and I'm going to try to,
sorry for the train.
No, it's perfect. It's all perfect. But I just want to note, like, I love how we can look back, and we talk about this often, we can look back and connect the dots. But I love that, like, when you finally ended up here, the apartment that Tynan sent you was an apartment above a store who is owned and operated by a woman who I call my second mom. Like, Susan's like my second mom. I call her my running mom.
Yeah.
Has so much experience with chronic pain and has a soul that just wants to help and give. She's so generous of her expertise and her time and her patience. And just like the way it all lined up, like, my question for you is, it took you a long time to make the decision, and obviously you ruminated over it, right? Like you said, for like 5 years. Mm-hmm. And you had so much success in Toronto. And other people in the same situation might not have been able to make that leap, right? So I'm curious, like, fear plays a huge role in the decisions that we make. And a lot of those fears keep us stuck. And we have to learn the skill of quieting those fears so we can actually hear our inner voice that is usually much more timid. And we have to kind of like ease it out and coax it to be louder. Do you feel like that's what you did? Like you worked to quiet those fears to hear that voice? Or like, I'm curious if it was like a rock bottom scenario where it was like you hit, like with an addict who hits rock bottom and then is like forced to make this decision. And just like how you actually made the decision to move here. Cause there are so many people. I want to say like, this is like, I'm a numbers person, but this is not a statistic with any validity. But I feel like 99% of the people with your level of success in Toronto would have never left. It just seems like such a big trade-off and such a big, scary move with uncertainty. Like all of it would be uncertain. And so I just really want to know more about how you actually got yourself to that place of like, thinking about it for 5 years, but then actually doing it. Like that seems so terrifying to me.
I think, yeah, because that, I feel like most people get to like right before the tipping point and they're like, no. Or like, and probably you were there many times. So what, like, yeah, like what made you actually tip and do it?
I think it's almost gone. I think it's a real combination again of two things that you said, Jody. You said it was like a rock bottom situation, and to a large degree, as much as whatever, I'm an open book and I have no shame because I've worked very hard in my life. But as a 41-year-old woman, it's like, oh, I should probably not say this. Tell the world. But I actually ran out of money. Like I was at the point where for almost the last year that I was there, like I was going in debt just to eat and pay rent. And there was a point where I've supported myself since I was a teenager, and so I'm good at that. And I've always been really good at figuring it out. And I've been, again, very lucky in my career. I've had great opportunities come my way. But it was a bit of a rock bottom. It was like do or die. It was like stay here and go into more debt every single month, which only added to all the awful. Or, just, so that's the hard part of that answer, is that I couldn't make it work anymore as much as I wanted to. But, and I think, like, to answer your question honestly too, like if I had been in a slightly better financial situation, like maybe if I had a second income in the house, or I had family who was like, here, my family has no money, and like that kind of thing. I also know a lot of artists who've had a lot of financial support through their careers, and a lot of people, I saw a great thing. It was like, how do you make it as an artist? And someone's like, have a trust fund. And that's really actually true in a lot of cases, so it was embarrassing, and I felt ashamed of myself, especially because on paper, it's like I've done everything. I've done so much. And so I felt ashamed that I could no longer afford to pay my own rent. But, after being away for the year that I've been here and reflecting on all of that, I was like, I'm not ashamed. Actually, I'm proud that for 20 years I lived in the most expensive city in Canada and paid my own way. And worked really hard to do that. And it's not my fault that, gigs became less and less, and expenses went up and up. And like, I didn't change, the world did. And so I had to go, this isn't my fault, and it's not my burden to fight against I can't fight against the reality of the situation. So I had to leave. And where I had the choice, where it becomes the beautiful story, was I could have, and a lot of people are like, why don't you, a lot of colleagues and friends of mine was like, well, why don't you just go get like everyone else doing and like get 4 roommates? Like everyone else is single. And I was just like, because I'm a 40-year-old woman and I've lived in my own apartment since I was in my 20s, and I don't want to suddenly go have 5, like I can't. Like maybe that was prideful of me, but I also think, or maybe a bit selfish, but at the same time, it was also what made it happen. Maybe my pride or my stubbornness or my ego. So we all have that ego that's like, no, I'm not going to live with 4 people. I'm not going to share a house with a bunch of 20-year-old acting students. Like, no, I'm beyond that. Like and that's ego. I admit it. But in a way, that's the one time I'm grateful for my ego, because it made me go, fine, I'll make, fresh start. That's like, I'm not ashamed of that. And so, most of it is financial. Like if I had been making more money, I might not have got back to Alberta maybe for another 10 years. I always knew I would come back here, but my plan was always when I'm old, in my 60s, that's when I was like, then I'll move to the mountains and I'll paint, by then my career will be, and so I kind of got here 20 years earlier than I expected, but I planned for, but in that moment I was like, whatever, I'd rather do honorable work, like doing anything, like working at the grocery store, like all these wonderful jobs that forever I'd be like, no. And now I'm like, no, it is like the most like amazing, like I'll take any job I can get, and I don't have that ego about that anymore. And that freed me open in a different way too, and gave me different perspective, and just, so it was a really long answer to that question, but I think it was like a rock bottom. Like I didn't have a choice. I either had to like stay in Toronto, but live like in a way I really didn't want to live, or just freaking jump out of the plane and go, I'm pretty sure I'm wearing a parachute. Let's just hope that when I pull the string that it opens. And it did. So, yeah.
One of my biggest mentors teaches this message about when you're creating your dreams, how when you get to the dream, like you always then you create a new dream. And when you get to that next place, then you move on to the next thing, right? And so it's neat to hear you say, you've ticked off a lot of the boxes of the dreams that you've created in parts of your past. And that has all of that, and all of the suffering, and all of the stress, and all of the pain, and the lack of finances got you to the point where now you're actually getting to create the next version of the bigger and better dream of the life that you're about to continue living, which is so beautiful to me. I see it very crystal clear in your story, how that really actually is. And I think it's like, kudos to you too for having the courage to jump, because I think that when I'm guessing, I'm not too sure because I don't live in the realm of sort of the arts industry, but I'm guessing that when you're in sort of that type of industry, or in sports, for example, too, when you hit that peak, then it's like, now what? Oh, like, but you were able to navigate your way through that. And here you are, and you're still navigating, but it's cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Building something bigger and better now.
I know, and I'm so excited. And that's the second part of the answer, Courtney, and Jody, is that like, it was one part, 50% I hit rock bottom. So it was like, stay in Toronto and be miserable or leave. And then 50% it was, well, what is it that I want the most in the whole world? Well, if you're like, and that's how I've honestly lived my whole life. It's like, go big or go home, take the risk, because, and this is what I teach when I teach improvisation. And I think that's a big part of it too, is I started studying improv very, very young with a mad genius, and I learned from a really young age that if you don't take the risk, so this is a great Keith Johnstone quote. He says, those who take a risk are rewarded with the adventures they have, and those who don't take the risk are rewarded with the safety they attain. So it's sort of like, it's not necessarily good or bad on either side, but what that very clearly points out is that if you do want something to change, or you do want to reach above where you are, there's a total risk that you're going to fall and it's not going to happen. But if you don't reach for it or jump, there's 0% chance that you'll get the thing. So it's been ingrained in me from such a young age that it was like, well, I'll take the leap. And then if I fall on my face, then I'll figure it out, because I have to figure it out anyway. But if I jump, there's a tiny chance it's going to work out. And it's kind of like that too. I think all actors kind of just have to have, it's like, that's what it's like to go to an audition, or to go to 4 auditions a day and just be like, well, I could be grumpy about this and just be like, you know what, call my agent. Like, I'm not going to ride the streetcar for 3 hours across the city today in 44-degree weather to walk across a room and pick up a pylon for a Via Rail commercial that they're only going to cast a skinny person in anyway, and just be like, screw it, I'm not going. Or you can just go, well, I'll go on the off chance that the casting director likes me, you know? And so I think I'm just kind of used to that risk measurement in my life. Everything I do, jazz is improvisation, improv is it's everything I do is risky. Even when I'm painting, I paint in watercolors. This is a risky medium, because like there's not a lot of fix in that. With like an acrylic or an oil, you can watercolor. It's just like it happens, and it's organic, and it's moving, and it's alive, and it's risky because it could go sideways at any moment. I think I'm really used to living like that.
What would you say has been the biggest kind of impact maybe on your self-esteem or like self-image or self-love, sort of that domain in taking this risk?
I've been thinking about that actually a lot the last couple of days. I had it because I've been having the last week has been really kind of spiritual and interesting for me. I don't know whether it's cosmos or hormones, who knows? Probably hormones, but if we're being honest. But I've been really looking inward this week, and thinking, I do feel like, this is gonna I don't want to sound trite, but I honestly am starting to like who I am. And it's so funny, and I don't think it's uncommon, especially for performers, because your whole job is to be judged 100% of the time you're working, 100% of your working minutes, when your job is to be in front of people, whether it's on a television screen or live singing or at whatever, is you're being judged 100% of the time, which is really intense. And so a lot of performers, especially comedians, it's very ripe in that world, hate themselves. And it's a very common thing. And it's a side effect of constant rejection. And it's a side effect of constant, you're not good enough. Even if you are, it's like, it's hard to not be like, it's me. Well, no, you didn't get the part because that other person was actually perfect for it. You're awesome, but you don't leave thinking I'm awesome, but that person was just, it's like, no, you leave thinking I'm the freaking worst. No one will ever love me. It just, so I've never liked myself. I've liked my achievements, and I've liked myself through my relationships with my beautiful friends and colleagues, and I've liked the music and the magic I've created, and I've liked a lot of that. But in terms of just actually I didn't look in a mirror. I couldn't look in a mirror for most of 2019. Like, I would walk by them and I didn't even put one up. Like, I couldn't look in a mirror because I was so hateful. And I'd rather go through my day without having to have that moment. And then I'd be like shut down for 4 hours. Like, well, at least if I want to get something done, I just have to remove the mirrors. And that to me now seems insane. And it's not like I still love looking in the mirror, but I was sitting on a bench at Chinook Lake, you know, the other day, and I was just thinking, like, I feel so great now these days, and it's not like I've hit any goal, and it's not even like I've set goals. It's just like I'm like, what is this strange sensation I'm having in my face? Like, oh, I'm happy. I'm smiling. Like, I'm
smile.
I'm not used to what that feels like. And I was like, yeah, I kind of I like this version of whoever it is I'm becoming. And I know it's going to keep changing and morphing, and I'm not leaving behind who I was before, but it feels nice to not spend all day, every day, just ragging on myself, you know, and it still happens a lot, but the amount of hours that it happens in a day is so much less because I'm too busy like watching a bald eagle and like walking a weird trail and smelling the pine needles and taking pictures of flower. Like, honestly, like living a Disney cartoon, I feel like. Or like every night when I go for my walk by myself at night, I'm like, I feel like I'm in like a solo version of Stand By Me. It's like I can just like got my sound. I'm just, you know, like it's just so epic. But I'm like, yeah, it is something I didn't expect to happen ever, or certainly not this fast. But I'm like, I like myself, and I think I'm okay. And I don't know if I've come all the way around yet to like that I'm, you know, worthy of love, or I want to get there because I don't want to be alone forever. And I think a lot of my issues that I've had in the past that have been mostly my own doing. You know, when I reflect on past relationships or whatever, and I'm like, you know, that was my fault. Like, that person actually tried to love me and I wouldn't let them, because I didn't love myself enough to let anyone love me. And so now that I'm here, it's like I don't want to rush into anything, and I'm not expecting or hoping, but it's just like now it just feels so good to be focusing on me. Again, that sounds so trite, but like just to focus on me and my health, and more importantly, my happiness and my sanity. And I'm getting this like tingly special feeling that's like, oh, I kind of get what, like, honestly, I felt so, I'm like, really, like, how many times in your life do you hear that phrase, oh, you know, you got to love yourself first and then everything will happen for you? And it's like, eye roll, like, come on, like, just, oh my God. But then I'm sitting there, you know, catching this like sunbeam through the rain shower, watching a fish jump out of the water. And I'm like, I don't hate myself. I'm feeling really good. And I was like, oh, maybe that, oh my gosh, that stupid saying was true, because I feel like now that I do kind of not think I'm the worst person in the world, that maybe I feel I've opened myself up for good things to come in my life. So in other ways, like, you know, not work related, like all the other things that are important, like love and health and community and all those things I didn't have time to even think about before. So it's kind of cool. Yeah.
It like, my heart broke and got full all at the same time in that little message. One, my heart totally shattered thinking about all the artists out there who are in that space of self-hatred and loathing and darkness. And then my heart got so full listening to your expression of that, like that transition from being in that space to where you are right now. And I'm reading a book this week specifically because of you, Terra, because cool. I have my own little library of books that I have not had time to read. And I often start them, and then once it's like served, whatever portion I've read is served, sometimes I don't finish books because I feel a calling to like start another book. So we were going camping for a few nights, and I was like, I just want to pick one book. And I just like scanned all the books that I have, and I just wanted to pick one. And the one that spoke to me was, the book. It's called Silence, The Power
of the
World of Full Noise by by Thich Nhat Hanh, who is one of my favorite like guided meditation guys. Mm-hmm. And it just like everything you spoke to was exactly what I've been reading for the last 3 days, where our heads are so full of noise, and the noise is not just noise. It's thoughts, it's feelings, it's emotions, it's senses, And when I imagine being in Toronto, being somebody who's doesn't like the city, doesn't thrive in a city, when I imagine being in Toronto, I feel like I just thinking about it right now, I feel overwhelmed and like I can't breathe. And so the idea of like how quickly you've transformed in the progress that you've made in such a short amount of time, just giving yourself space and silence, like it's just phenomenal to me how transformative that is. And I love the message that you have just given to everybody who is going to listen. There are going to be people who listen to this and watch this who so need to hear that message. And I'm just so grateful that you shared it, that you were like a vessel for everyone who needs to hear that. It's so beautiful.
I think we said in I think it was in the last episode, it came up how time is our currency, our greatest currency, I think that we have. And time also in sort of reflective of attention and what we place our attention on with the time that we have. And it seems like that's been one of your greatest shifts, is just in the time that you have, how much of that time are you putting your attention, like how much of that time are you putting your attention on what, right? And how it's starting to shift and into something that gives you the space to see who you are and love who you are as on the inside, instead of just loving your accomplishments and your adventures.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. And it's funny because it's even hard when you're in it to even love your accomplishments. Like, cause that's the other thing, is that I've only been able to start loving those too, because when you're in it, like it's still never good enough. It's like, well, but it's everything you didn't book. It's not, look what I did. It's look what I didn't get. Look what I effed up. Look what look at this. Like, I'll try to make this super short, but there's one incident as an actor that almost stopped me from ever performing again, which is crazy because I've been performing since I was a kid. But something that never happens to people in the industry happened, and it was because of being on Orphan Black. We were shooting, I think it was when we were shooting on season 2, and I was just in the green room, having my lunch or whatever, and made the awful mistake. Boy, did I learn a lesson that day. It was like some random person who I assumed was just, but was like a grip or a lighting tech. Like there's hundreds of people on that crew. That was a big show, just like people everywhere, So I was like, I had no idea. I was actually speaking to the woman who wrote the episode. And I had no idea. And we just started, striking up conversation and talking, and I, as I can go off, and she made a really interesting point, and I said something like, this show is so great, and anyone who's an Orphan Black fan knows, like, it's a very inclusive show, and very female driven, and just female positive, and very feminist positive, and very LGBTQ like everything about that show. And so I was just kind of getting on that bandwagon and praising the show, and I was like, yeah, for me as a plus size actress, like, this is so amazing. Like, I would never actually, if this show wasn't so cool in all of those ways, like there's no way I would get cast on a big show like that. Like little, for sure. But like they were inclusive, and they were like not gonna not see me, and believe me, that happens because of my waist size or whatever. So I was just talking about, and then, that led to a further conversation about how it's actually super hard to make it as an actress if you're not super thin, and all of this. And I didn't know, I was like talking to a writer, and then, a couple days later, I just get this email from her, and she's like, listen, I really took your conversation to heart, and I work on this other show, which I won't mention, big TV show, and she's like, I'm just enamored with you, and I want to write a part for you. And like, that's the phone call you wait for your whole life, your whole career. And for about a week, my life was like, I was on cloud 35, and I got like great like thrown into these crazy meetings in really fancy places with really scary rich women producer, like it was the scariest, most exciting time in my life, and all this stuff happened. And the one lady producer was very against it, but the writer was the head writer, and so she was on my team. But she literally looked at me and was like, well, how are we going to explain a fat cop? And that was like the first thing she said in this huge industry meeting I had. Like, I was shitting my pants. Like, I can't even begin to explain the pressure because at the same time, and I had already, like, in my head let myself go there and was like, wow, like one season of this, if this happens from one season of work, I'm gonna be able to buy a house. Like, all my dreams are gonna come true. All the money struggles I've had my whole life will be over. Like, it was so massive. And and then, like, they put together this whole audition, this huge screen test with like the super handsome famous actor to come read with me, which also never happens. They normally just have like a reader who gives you nothing. And it was like red carpet, like laid out. The woman wrote the part for me. And I blew it so bad. It was the worst audition of my life. And I had been given more time and more stuff than you ever get for a regular audition to make sure that it would be great. And I saw the woman's face, the writer who like wrote this for me and went to bat for me. I saw her crumble as it was happening. There's like 18 people at a big table and a huge screen and like 4 cameras. Like, I couldn't breathe. I'd never been in an audition that big, so I'd never experienced that level of pressure, and I buckled completely. And I was the worst actor in the world. That poor man, it was horrible. It was awful. And they gave me so many tries too, which also never happens in auditions. They're like, why don't we do it again? And actually at one point I got a note from a lady, from one of the scary, like big bird ladies. I feel they were like, from like the chrysalids, or like they just turned into these like scary, one lady actually said, okay, Terra, why don't we try it again? And this time maybe try not acting. And I died. I died inside. And I knew I blew it. Like, I knew it was not going to happen. And when I left the audition room, like, I was shaking and I puked, like, immediately, threw up everywhere, like, went in the bathroom, but like, just lost my lunch. And I got in a cab and I called my agent. And by the time I called my agent, they had already emailed her and been like, no, it's not going to happen. And I was paralyzed. I was paralyzed for a really, thankfully I still had a full-time jazz singing career. So I still, and that was mostly how I made, like, the acting stuff was always the gravy, because it was not as often, like, music's how I made my everyday, like, grinding it out every week. But I didn't even want to get on stage to sing, which was completely unrelated. I couldn't, for the first time since I was like 14 years old, I couldn't perform. And it scared the living daylights out of me. And I've never been so depressed and hated myself more for anything. And it took me, I think I've finally forgiven myself for blowing that. But that is just one example of why, like, it was hard. And why people hate themselves. Well, geez, like, how do you not hate yourself when you are handed everything on a platter and you mess it up? I don't even know why I got into that story.
Do you think that happened because that maybe if you got that part, it would have taken you down a path where it maybe would have actually caused more self-destruction in your life and your health and your happiness and your mental, like, all of that?
Yeah, you have
like,
to.
I wonder, yeah. go ahead. Sorry.
No, I think you're right. I think you have to think of it that way. Otherwise you go crazy. And the fact that that's also could very well be true, because every decision and every action has a different outcome. And, you know, not coincidentally, but like oddly enough, the show actually got canceled like less than a year after that. And it had been on for like 11 seasons or something. So when that happened, I went, oh, I would have had to deal with that, which would have been like just getting in, and then the show gets canceled, which has nothing to do with you. So I'm like, that actually probably would have been a harder pill to swallow. So in that sense, but yeah, like playing to what you're saying, and who knows what would have happened. Maybe me with money is a bad thing. We don't know, because I've never had any. Maybe I would have become a monster. So
you with money at that time.
At that time, I was just going to say that at that time, you needed to be the person who you are now.
The money will come when you're ready for it, right?
I believe that now, Jody, and I do, because the other things that like that statement is true now. It's like the more positive I am, the more positive things seem to happen. And I'm like, wow, like this isn't a racket. Like this is true. Like when you have positive thoughts and you feel good and you invite all these great things in. And so that is what's so exciting, is like I'm just at the beginning of my super happy positive. And so I'm like, wow, what will come to me once I'm like actually a human being who has joy and love to give instead of just panic. So I'm excited, hopefully.
Like nature itself, which is so relevant to you because of your so much time in nature, just look at your Facebook page, is cyclical. Everything in nature is cyclical, right? Like there's water cycles and everything is cyclical, right? And even the seasons, it's all a cycle, and our energy is cyclical too, right? So whatever we give is what we receive, because it cycles like that, and is how I've been taught. And oftentimes too, when we don't receive, which I think probably a lot of women, probably men too, but I know that I am a woman, so it is definitely something that I know that I have talked with people. When we don't receive, it's like kinking a hose, and you can't give. Or when you don't give, it's kinking the hose and you can't receive. So yeah, it is really interesting that you're starting to find that, because I think probably you're doing more of both, hey? Like you're feeling like you're giving more of yourself, but then you're receiving more of who you are naturally, and you're
yeah, the law of attraction is no joke.
Yeah, it really isn't.
This is a great segue into kind of having a bit of a conversation about the more recent time and COVID-19. So you move here, right? You're here for a little bit, and then COVID-19 hits, right? Obviously, throws another, obstacle your way to navigate through, which you are brilliant at. So thank God for that. But you have taken it upon yourself to use that time in a really brilliant way. And I'm curious, because you really isolated, right? You live on your own. You were having your groceries picked up for you and all those kinds of things. How many days was it that you really were it was just you? You didn't see anybody
Still
else?
like that. I've only actually had 2 in-person visits, and they've both been in the last like 10 days. Right. So it was over 70 days. And yeah, I with the grocery thing, it was like that. I'm getting money from the government. I'm getting the CERB money, right? So that was like, I was like feeling guilty. I'm like, this, like, I want to like support a small business, something, so that, and then like I did it as long as I could afford it. And then like, I can't afford this anymore. But yeah, I mean, that was just, I was lucky. I'm lucky, I guess, in that sense to have, like, I'm so lucky. I'm so grateful the government actually helped us out. But yeah, it's been like 70 something days. And it's not like I know a ton of people here, but I do have a great little group, you know, of pals and friends that I've made over the year, and like beautiful, lovely people. And like I would still at least be like having human contact and hugs and like stuff like that you don't realize how much important that is until you don't have that. So that's been really kind of, I mean, for the most part, like, especially compared to everyone in the world, like, I always joke with my friends, I'm like, I'm having the best apocalypse ever. Like, you know,
right?
COVID's been good to me. Like, you know, like it's easy. I joke, like that's how I cope. That's how my coping mechanism is. I make jokes, and there's always a bit of truth in every joke, right? It's like, yes, I am, you know, Justin Trudeau paid my rent this month. Like, thank you. You know, but at the same time, I've never received money from the Canadian government or from anyone ever. This is the first time in my life. I've never had EI. I've never had anything. I've never even received a grant, and Lord knows I've applied for many of them. So, you know, part of combating my guilt over getting them was like, okay, I'm going to try to support small businesses. I'm going to try to do whatever I can to help locally and that kind of thing. But the loneliness part and the like going it alone, like it's been a double-edged sword, because again, it's like the universe is like, how many times did you sit in that loft and be like, well, if I just had like 3 months to do nothing, like obviously it'd be so much easier to like get a bit fit or to make that painting or to write that book. You know, it's like, you know, that's always the excuse because you didn't have time. Like it was just like nonstop, go. And so I kind of had to go like, oh, like, ooh, wow, I guess like I really don't have an excuse now. And I want to say at the same time that I'm saying that to anyone who isn't having that kind of COVID, like it's also, there's no judgment, because I could have just as easily had to take care of my mental health in a different way, which might not have been, okay, for the first time in my life, I'm going to tackle my biggest demons and, you know, and do this thing. It's like me, and some people, if they sat around and needed to sit and just watch TV and take baths and eat chocolate and drink tea, that's fine too. Everyone is different. I just had a sobering moment with myself where, for me, I can only speak for my own experience, I know this is going to go one of two ways, because like, yes, I'm having the greatest apocalypse ever, but the double side of that is that I also have no idea when either of my industries will go back to work. And I lost so much work overnight on March 14th. I was supposed to be in Toronto for 2 weeks starting March 24th, like big tour, lots of money. Like that was going to be my chunk to get me through the end of summer. Like just overnight, just went away. Like, so I am also still dealing with the panic and the existential, like, do I have to get a whole new career for the first time in my life? I'm up for it. That's cool. Thankfully, I'm in a great place if that's how it plays out. But, you know, yes, I'm outside for 10 hours a day, but it's because that's also partially, yeah, I'm working on my goal, and I chose to take the time and try to make something productive. But it's also because it's like the only thing I can control in my life right now. The rest of my life is super scary. And I'm really sad because I had finally just got away from that feeling. You know, like I had finally didn't have to panic every single day for a while, and it obviously had a great positive effect on me. So through this, I've been really worried that, oh man, like my anxiety is through the roof because I don't know when I'm gonna have a job again. And so, you know, I was like, well, I have to try to put, you know, that law of attraction. I have to go, okay, well, maybe if I finally take responsibility for my shit and just put the work in, because I have the time now, and that was always the excuse, and do that, then maybe that will help the universe propel in a way that I won't be super effed for the next year, you know? And so that's part of it. And part of it, honestly, it's like when you look at someone's thing, it's like, oh my God, my Instagram, it's enviable, you know? but it's because I'm trying not to have a massive anxiety attack, and I have anxiety issues and I have problems, and I do, like, I'll be out at the lake and I'll have a little panic attack and I'll sit down and I'll breathe it out, and then I'm like, okay, and I can get to an okay place much faster now than I could before. But you know, part of that, wow, she's really giving her. Yeah, it's because I have so much anxiety and energy that I can't sleep, and I have a lot of worry, and I just, more than anything in the whole world, do not want the worry of the future post-COVID to affect me physically in the way that it did last year, because it almost killed me. And I just need to fight against that. And if that means hiking in paradise every day, then great. I'm super freaking lucky.
I gotta tell you, it's just like ringing in my ears, Jode. Just row, row, row your boat. Like, this is our thing where row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 life is but a dream. And like, the more aligned that you get with the rowing being easy, and being in that place where you get to just appreciate, and like Jody and I sometimes joke, like we can feel when we're in the flow, because we're like, oh, the universe is rowing for us, you know. This feels good, but it feels easy, it feels merry, and I, you know, like, it's just popping into my mind. And the other thing that popped into my mind right now, and I just want to say it, is how sometimes it's very much, it goes back to two podcasts back, two people back, to Kennedy, where she was talking about gestation, and how when you're a mom, you gestate not only a baby, but you gestate a new version of yourself. And it very much feels like, to me, like the feeling that I get in my body when I hear you talking is that it just seems like this is this gestation period, and it's not like, you know, you're gestating the new self, like the new version of you. And it's then at that point that maybe that's when you're only at that point that you're going to be ready for the next thing that's for you. Yeah. I don't know, words that popped into my head, so I just wanted to say them out loud.
That totally rings true for me. Like, absolutely. I think that, and something else you guys said earlier too, you're talking about fear. And when I teach improvisation, like, I can totally teach that. The idea that fear is, you know, and our defense mechanisms, and that, you know, but in real life, it's so much harder to actually put those things in practice and recognize it. And I think part of it that I'm also realizing as I'm sitting on benches at Chinook Lake is, I've been thinking a lot, doing a lot of soul searching this week and a lot of this stuff. And part of it is that I've always known, and I just wouldn't articulate it, and I wouldn't give it a voice, or give it a sentence that, you know, like, part of the resistance to change, as someone who was always changing, and to, like, again, work-wise, I'm like flowing like the river, like, it was like mutable and everything, but like personally, no. And part of it was because I think I know, like, there was this huge fear. It's like, I've always been one way. And so anytime something would go bad or wrong, or I'd have a massive failure or a massive heartbreak or whatever it was on any given day, I always had a reason. And it was probably not the actual reason 99% of the time, but I had this little thing that I could always blame all of my problems on. Well, it's just because I'm fat is usually what it would be, or it's just because I'm not, you know, as pretty as so-and-so, or it's because, you know, whatever it is. Mostly it was to do with being a bigger person. And it was like, it became almost like an addiction, to the point where, like, I had good friends who, like, you're like, get your head out of your ass. Actually, you just failed. It had nothing to do, but so it became this like little weird effed up like thing in my own brain. I was like, so I think there is this huge fear of going, but what happens if I change, or I suddenly get to a point where I like me and then they still don't like me. Then I won't be able to say it's because of that thing anymore. And that's terrifying, because then it means they just don't like me. and you know what I mean? And so I've been thinking about that a lot this week too, of just going like, sometimes I think people are afraid to go through the big change or like tackle the big monster, because when they come out on the other side, they might have to accept hard things that they can't blame on the monster anymore. If the monster is gone, then it's just your own fault. You know, like, so I think I've always been a little bit afraid to fully come into my power or my true happiness and myself and unabashedly love myself. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but I know that I'm less afraid of that now and willing to go. And I think also that has to do with getting on the other side of 40. It's so nice to get older and be like, I actually just don't really care. Like, if so-and-so doesn't think I'm pretty, I'm not going to go home and cry about it for 2 weeks. In my 20s, it'd be then, it's the end of the world. I didn't get that part. And then you see who they cast, right? And you're like, because everything I've auditioned, like, you see it on TV, you're like, oh yeah, I auditioned for that commercial. Oh yeah, I auditioned for that part. Like, I had a great audition for Schitt's Creek that they gave to an amazing Black musician friend of mine. And I was so bummed I didn't get it because I love that show so much. And I was like, I want to be the jazz gal. And then they cast my good friend Shakira. And I was like, oh, well, she was way better for the part, so it's weird when you see it and it's hard not to be like, well, it's because of this. Now I'm like, I don't care. It's so nice to be older and not worry so much about what people think. That definitely has helped a lot too. But yeah, I think that being afraid that I won't have my monster to blame my shit on anymore, it will be new territory. So it'll be more personal responsibility, which is a scary thing.
Yeah, it's that safety net, that scapegoat, right? That's easy to always default to. That makes it not really yours. It makes it something else's, Yeah, but I also think it's a beautiful place to be where I feel like if you are at that place where you truly have self-love, self-respect, and you just embrace who you are, I feel like alongside that comes the strength to shoulder those kinds of things, those kinds of rejections, where you also understand that it's not you that resulted in the rejection. Like, you love yourself to a place and to a point where it just wasn't meant for you. It's like Courtney and I always say, this or something better. So we like, huge fear, right? Like, we jumped into applying for a TEDx talk, which is a big dream of ours, and it didn't happen, right?
Massive fail.
Like, we didn't even make the first cut, shirtless. We thought for sure we're a shoo-in. We got like the husbands on board. They were helping us. Like, we poured hours and hours of our time and our heart and our soul into this application. But there's this presence about it that we know it served a purpose. We know that process moved us closer to whatever is next. And it's this or something better. And if this doesn't happen, then something better is happening down the road. And that is hard to have faith in sometimes. But I do feel like when you get to that place, you have that ground, that foundation to stand on. I don't think you get to that point without having that underneath you. So I think it's easier. Yeah. Not easy, but easier.
Easier.
Exactly.
So I'm going to turn this to a selfish question that Jody and I have. So we hear that you want to climb a mountain. That's like one of your goals.
Someday, a little one.
And we selfishly want to be on your first journey to the summit of a mountain.
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't know when that will happen. I have a sooner goal that maybe you guys could come with me. I am looking for people who are non-judgmental hikers because I'm slow. I'm like the tortoise, which is what I'm learning about myself too, and learning to not hate my my poor body that has just been crushed and broken and, so it's like I have to have patience with it and acknowledge how far it's carried me despite what's happened to it. And so my goal for this summer was, and I mean, who knows what's going to happen, but is they're like Tent Mountain or Window Mountain. So I've had a friend say like, it's pretty hard and there's 5 switchbacks and there's like a super steep part. So that was kind of like, if I could achieve that goal first, then maybe in the next year, then I could work towards like Sasky or like some sort of thing. And I definitely am like have massive insecurity about like hiking with fit people, because I'm just like, like I stop a lot, I take a lot of pictures, and I don't just go like it takes me a while, but I'll get there. That's the thing I'm learning about this body, is that actually if I have faith in it, like I'm not built for speed, but I can go way farther and higher than I thought already. So I feel like it's possible. Like when I did Star Creek Falls twice last week. It was the first time I'd ever been up there. I'd only ever gone to the bottom. And like when I started going up, I thought for sure I saw that first hill. I was like, okay, so it's up there and then it'll be good. And it just keeps going up. I had no idea. And I'm by myself, of course, right? So I get up there and I wanted to turn around so bad. I just was like, no. And I just forced myself to go. And then I realized like, that's pretty high up. And there was like a pretty steep part, that one part down to that last bridge. Like, I was like, that wasn't. And then I look at the trail thing. Of course, they're like, oh, that's an easy hike. And I'm laughing. I'm like, well, I'll never do an intermediate hike then, like ever. Because if someone thinks that's easy, like to me, like, the first time I did Miner's Path when I first moved here, it took me 4 hours. And that's probably embarrassing. Like people like my 2-year-old, runs that in, but I couldn't move, but I did it. I stopped it's also because I stop and I sit along the river and, like listen to music for a while. And then, I took my time, but so I feel like, I've seen it progress. I'm like, okay, well, Star Creek, I actually didn't take me that long. Like it was hard, but I'm like, I did it pretty fast. And I did it 2 days in a row. And then my legs were like, third day, they were like, my brother's like, you have to rest, you realize. I'm like, okay, I won't do it today. But I felt proud of myself, if that's not super embarrassing to be like, I'm Star Creek, like big whoop. But to me, that was a mountain. And something else with my best friend, like we had a moment the other day because I sent her pictures and I said, Sophia, like I climbed 100 meters of elevation or like 95 meters up, and like, and she just started to cry and I started to cry. And because she came with me, I had a total knee replacement in 2016 on my right knee, which is an awful surgery and a really awful recovery. It's very hard. She came to my first physio appointment post-op with me, and the guy asked me, he's like, what are your goals? And I actually said, I was like, well, I want to climb a mountain someday. And knowing that was like the most ridiculous thing that you'd ever say in that meeting, but Sophia was there with me, and so she was like, wow, like, I know it was just Star Creek Falls, but like for me, it was so huge, and it made me feel really good about moving here and just about my decisions in general. It made me feel so alive to like feel the blood running through my body that way, and to feel my breath. Like I'm a singer, so I'm very in touch with my breath, but not in that way. I was like, this is a whole new feeling, and then, like the endorphins, I'm like, this is the best drug I've ever done. Like, honestly, I'm like, this feeling. And then the feeling of like feeling proud of yourself. Again, I'm like, what's this strange feeling I'm having? And I'm like, this is also a good drug. Like that feels so good when you go to sleep and you're like, like, I did something great today, or like, just this, like, I can't, it's a nice feeling, and it does motivate me. So maybe guys, if I'm ready to climb a mountain, you'll be the first people I call.
Sweet. I have this, like, two things. First, I would love to challenge you to, like, eliminate the word just from your vocabulary.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
I feel like it's never just Star Creek. It's never just this. Whenever it's a first time, it is like the thing. And it is, so the idea of, like, yes, some fit people are not fun to do things with because they don't ever want to wait for anybody. And that's just the way some people are. Me personally, it, like, fills my soul, and I'm kind of addicted to being present with people when they do things for the first time, because it is like a drug. It is like the most amazing, like, to you only get to do things for the first time once, but then you can, like, relive that through other people. Like, so I love being just a witness to people, accepting a challenge and committing to a goal and then doing it. And that it's like, it is one of my favorite experiences. So, and I have this image in my head, Courtney, of us with you next June. So 1 year from today, going up Sasky, because June is the best time because the flowers are amazing, like stunning, amazing, like fields of these big yellow flowers. And Heather Davis would probably slap me on the hand for not knowing what they're called. But anyways, I have pictures of my kids when they were 2 years ago when we climbed Sasky, and them, like, walking through this field of, like, beautiful yellow flowers. I picture us walking with you up Sasky with all these yellow flowers and, like, you singing.
Oh, like, I'm sure I would sing.
Like it's a musical. I'm like, goosebumps. I'm like, I need to be there.
Well, maybe in a year I'll be able to do Sasky, I want to get to Tent Mountain. I know I'll sob like a baby if I get to see what that looks like in person. So,
keep us posted. Definitely keep us posted.
Yeah. That's exciting. Heather's a great person too for that kind of support too.
Yeah, I love watching. I follow all of their Instagram and their Facebook, and yeah, I love seeing what they do. That's something I thought of too. It's like, I'm not quite ready yet to, like, be doing this with other people just yet. Like, it's still a pretty private. I need to still work through a lot of insecurities about it and a lot of just my own physical things. But as I physically get stronger, I mentally get stronger, then I'm like, yeah, like those programs, like the hikes and the camp. I'm like that's something I would love to be, the kind of person who's like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. Like, that would terrify me before. Like, oh my gosh, the idea of doing anything athletic around anyone is like my actual worst nightmare. Like, even to the point, like, I'm such a weirdo, but like, even if I'm walking on the trail anywhere, I stop. Like, if now obviously with COVID, like, you gotta get out of the way, but like before that, it was like I just, like, let everyone go because I can't deal with the idea of someone watching me walk from behind. It's just like it's my worst nightmare. I'm like, no, just go ahead. I'm even like that when I drive. I'm like, just pass me, just go. Like, I just want to be back here by myself. But it's definitely how I feel right now when I'm hiking, because I'm like, I'm probably I have a bit of a balance issue, right? So it's something I just have to live with for the rest of my life, that people, like, think I was drunk, and I don't even drink, but, like, because I'll just get really my inner, like, I had a really bad head injury, and, like, it affects me in certain ways. And so I'm like, like, when I was going up the thing, and that one part where I literally was running from one tree to the next and grabbing it, not to just fall off the cliff. Like, I was just like, because I got really off balance, and I was like, I'm not quite ready for someone to watch what it really looks like when I hike. But eventually, yes.
You should make some bloopers for, like, down the road when it shows the progression from beginning to, like, top of the mountain. Make sure you have a few of those bloopers to remind yourself of how far you've come.
Yeah, no kidding. We'll see.
So I think we should start to wrap up, but I want to ask one more question just as sort of a wrapping up, which is if you can pick one of your biggest lessons, maybe about your life or your career or yourself, that you've learned from all of this time in nature, or maybe from this transition to a new space to become a new person. If you wanted to share a lesson that you felt that in your experience in life right now, something that you're experiencing that might help other women in the world in their own experiences in their lives. Is there anything that you feel called like that to share?
I guess, just that thing of all those cliches being true, that if you can't love yourself, what does RuPaul say? If you can't love yourself, how the heck can you expect someone else to love you? Or I don't know. I think maybe the biggest would just be like to not underestimate yourself. Even if you put yourself in certain categories or you're put in those categories by other people who aren't you, even if that's the dialogue you have going, it's the biggest lesson that I've had is that if you can just try to make it still, like you're saying, just long enough to just 1 minute of getting it to shut up, and you can just not doubt yourself for 1 minute every day, then in that 1 minute every day, you'll be able to do more than you think you can.
Oh, I love that.
If you can make 1 minute, it can be 5. And then if it's 5 minutes, it can be 10. And so I think that's the lesson that I've wanted to learn my whole life, that I'm only just learning now, is that people don't hate you as much as you think they do. And people aren't judging you probably as much as you think they are. Some people do. But for the most part, it's mostly in your freaking head. And yeah, that if you just can let yourself believe for one little bit every day that you can do something you don't think you can do, if anything, you'll maybe at least be able to try. And I'm not afraid of failing and trying again. That I'm really good at, but it's getting to that point where you just try that first time. That's the hard part to do. So that's the lesson, is like, you can get that. You can get the courage. You just have to let yourself believe that you're better than you think you are. Maybe.
I love that. Thank you. Sarah. That's like the perfect note for us to end on. We do, at this little podcast, we really love showcasing local talent and trying to get the word out there as to how people can access you. So we will definitely in the show notes post links to your Instagram and your Facebook and all the things. But what are you maybe offering right now? I don't know if you're doing Zoom lessons or what are you offering right now, that if there's somebody who's listening who they might be interested in connecting with you and learning from you, or they know somebody who's looking for art lessons or singing lessons or acting lessons or whatever, how can people access your brilliance?
Oh, you're so sweet. Well, I wouldn't say I'm brilliant, but I go. I'm a goer. Well, I'm definitely teaching singing, and right now it's all over the computer. But I've had a couple students who've been so great and stayed with me through this. So if anyone, singing, that kind of thing, or just even breathing and using your voice, for people who are afraid of public speaking or need to learn how to speak louder and with more authority, anything to do with your voice and your breath, I can help you out a lot. And then, mostly it's singing lessons. So that, and then I have one student who is studying acting with me, which has been really fun. He's never done anything like that. And so I'm helping him learn just the basics of how to take a monologue and how to do it. And he has hopes of maybe being an extra and maybe getting into something someday. So it's been really fun for me to do one-on-one coaching sessions with him. And so right now, again, normally that's in person, but anyone who wants to just talk about like script analysis, scene analysis, how do you break apart a monologue, any just acting basics, whatever, that I do one-on-one coaching for as well. And then I guess the other thing is that I paint portraits from photos primarily. So someone sends a photo and then I paint it, and I have a Facebook page called Portraits by Terra. That's just my artwork and all the information's there. And something that I was going to announce tomorrow, so this is perfect, is I'm going to offer free portraits to any person of color, and then for the next month. And then anyone who's white who orders a portrait, I'm going to donate 50% of all of every portrait to a Black organization, which I haven't picked yet, but I'm going to figure that out tonight, exactly where I want the money to go, as a way to try to offer something, to the community. But yeah, so I'm really easy to find online, all my stuff, and yeah, anything teaching would be awesome. And then the most important thing is I really hope to get Improv Club really coming back super strong once we're allowed to gather again. That's my biggest exciting passion here, and the group of people that have come so far are amazing because everyone in Crow's Nest Pass is so nice, and I just want to do more of that.
I'm excited for that to kick up because I wasn't able to go.
I know.
The first couple, and I was so bummed, and then COVID slammed the rest of the options. So yeah, definitely I will be a student of the improv.
Awesome. Well, and thank you so much, you guys, for helping get that word out. I mean, that's something really awesome that you do for your guests, and I'm sure everyone appreciates that hugely, especially in this very strange time that we're living in.
Well, we are super grateful that you donated so much of your time and shared so vulnerably and authentically with us.
Yeah, I hope I didn't say too much.
It's perfect. It is. We are all perfectly where we're supposed to be, and how this transpired is exactly how it was meant to transpire. So it's perfect. Mm-hmm. And we just ask that our viewers and listeners, if you got something from this or thought of somebody, this conversation, brought a name up in your head, share this, like this, subscribe, comment. We want you to comment. We want to know your thoughts and your questions. And I am sure we are going to have Terra on again. So what else do you want to know about? What questions do you have for her? And just move forward with your day, your week, just doing exactly what Terra suggested. Try to find 1 minute, just 1 minute to shush that noise and find your inner voice, just 1 minute every day. So thank you very much. I am
thank you so much
grateful for the conversation we had today.
Thank you so much for including me. It really helps me feel like I'm part of the community here, which is something that's really important to me. So thank you.
Well, we welcome you with open arms.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for listening, guys.
Till next time.